So this is a detailed video of the Woodmaster system that can be used on any of our sanding machines with planetary heads. Okay, so what we need to do is assess the floor and understand the level of damage that we need to remove. So if it's a very poor condition floor, we need to start at either the 60 grit. If it's moderate to light damage, if it's more severe, we'll start at the 40 grit, and if there's unevenness and deeper scratches or a tougher lacquer, we could also choose to start with the metals step 2. Okay, so because this was it was a solid oak board, but it has a factory lacquer on that is quite soft and easy to cut through. So here we've started with the 60 grit zirconia. Okay, so from the pictures and the video footage you can see that quite quickly it's taking that down. Okay, because it's also similar to like an engineered, it's a click system board. They are very flat and there's very minimal unevenness and lippage on this floor, so it's a lovely floor to work on. Okay, so what we do, we work the middle section with the starting grit, which was 60, and then now what we do, we move on to the edges. So we have a range of edging machines. So here we've chose to use the Flex Round, which is an orbital sander. Okay, so the orbital sander is very good. It's easy to use, but it's not the most powerful cutting machine. So if it was a tougher lacquer or a more damaged floor, we'd want to choose to start with the Mini Beast or the Bonner Edger. Yeah, so because it's quite a soft factory lacquer, you can see here the orbital and the square are dealing with that no problem. Okay, just at 60 grit. So the aim here is to remove all the lacquer and get all the floor back to fresh, like virgin boards. Okay, so once we've completed the 60 grit, so we do the zirconia in the middle. So they are the blue pads with one hole in the middle. They go onto the Barbarian, and the Dexter, which is in this footage. So around the edge we use the silicon carbide, which is the black ones. Okay, so now that the 60 is complete, we've now moved on to the 80 grit. Okay, so it's very important that we move through the grit sequences in order. We don't skip grits, and we don't try and sort of cut any corners as we move through. Okay, because that will cause us problems as we get further on. So what you can see, I'm doing a very consistent pattern over the floor. So I'm working sort of left to right, we call it like north to south, east to west, and we're also then getting a real consistent nice finish and scratch pattern. Okay, so again I've done the 80 in the middle, and we're now doing the 80 round the edge. Okay, what we aim to do is to bring the whole floor, so with the 80 grit and any grit, we're trying to bring the whole floor all to the same level. Okay, from wall to wall. So that's the 80 grit. So we will still have some impressions in the floor at this point, but it will start to smooth out and improve. Okay, so from the 80 grit we now move on to the 100, and again we do the 100 in the middle and we do the 100 at the edge. Okay, so again, nice consistent movement, slow movements. We're not throwing the machine around, we're working nice and even to get that perfect scratch pattern. Okay, once you've gone up to your 100 zirconia and you've done your 100 round your edge, we now need to move to the single disc. So that's the one single head, and this is where we're going to apply the mesh. Okay, so because we've moved technologies, we've done 100 grit on the zirconia and the black carbides around the edge. We now need to stay at the 100 grit and because we've moved technology, so the mesh is a finishing pad. Okay, so the other pads have prepared the floor, they're preparation pads. This is now finishing it and getting it ready so that we can put the lacquers and the finishes on. Okay, so what we need to do, we stay at the same grit and we move from 100 zirconia cutting preparation pad and we move to 100 finishing pad. What we'll find now is that the floor will get really smooth. So what we need to do is keep identifying if there's any areas of concern where we've got swirl marks or deeper scratches than we expect. This is where we need to attend to these and remove them. So if it's only small areas, we recommend you do it with the hand machine, but if it's bigger areas, we'll sort of go back onto the planetary and take it out, but keep checking your work. So we've now moved on to the 120 grit mesh, and this is the final paper or pad before you start applying your lacquer. Okay, so again, really nice consistent movements. Plan your floor out, work out your path that you're travelling, and there we're vacuuming. Most important, you will have seen it through the whole video, you need to vac in between every step. What we don't want is any grit that is getting contaminated for the next pad. Okay, what we do now, we're ready to seal the floor. So there we've got previously we used the pre-lac. We're now recommending the Bonner Mega 1, which is one product that you do. It's all 3 coats, okay, so you've got no changing between your primer and then your top coats. It's the Bonner Mega 1. It's a really nice product and it's just straight 3 coats and job done. Even if it's light domestic, normal domestic area, you can probably get away with 2 coats. But we recommend 3 coats for light domestic, light heavy domestic and light commercial. That's perfect. Okay, so what we need to do is you work the floor with the roller, and what we need to do is cut in about 6 inches from the edge with a paintbrush. Yeah, so we get right up to the edge. Okay, you'll notice I'm only working about 2 to 3 boards back with my paintbrush, and then I'm continuing and bringing the roller in the middle to feather in and bring the whole floor together. Okay, what we don't want to do is do all around the edge and then start doing the middle, because what will happen is by the time you get back to the end of the room, that's going to dry and that allows crossover marks. Okay, so we're just going through. I like to work sort of 2 boards at a time, or depending on the type of board that you're working on, just plan it out, have a quick think, look at the size of your roller and just sort of work a couple of boards at a time. And again, we're looking for a really nice, even, consistent finish. Okay, we're not slapping it on, putting real thick coats on. What we need to do is put a nice smooth coat. So we prefer 3 nice sort of thin consistent coats, much better than sort of 1 or 2 really thick coats. Yeah, so again, what will happen here, and this happens with any sort of water based product, when the water hits the wood, it will actually, the first time it will prickle up. Okay, so that's to be expected and we're not worried about that. You'll also find, because this is your first base coat, the wood is very open and it's like almost very dry, so it'll really suck it in. So you're going to get places where it'll suck in more than others, and it can sort of tend to almost look a little bit patchy. Okay, we're not going to be too concerned about that as long as we've not got any bits that are pooling or clumping. We know that as we put the next 2 coats on, you're going to then get a lovely end result. Okay, so again, see that we're just working the edges, a couple of boards at a time. We've planned this room out, we know exactly where we're going from start to finish, what our exit is. So if you're doing a couple of rooms and you've got to work out a door, just have a little think, plan it out. work out where you're going, how you're doing your boards, and it'll make the whole job a lot easier. What you don't want to be doing is stretching over, trying to lacquer, and then you're struggling to reach places and get a nice sort of soft movement on that roller. Because we're not putting any pressure on the roller, we're just letting its own weight just move it around and just spread the lacquer around. Okay, if we start to push down, you'll start to get like almost tram lines at either end, and it can start to clump. Okay, so what we want to do, that first coat, that will actually dry in very quick, often in normal room conditions within about 30 minutes, but we want to leave it for 1 to 2 hours to dry, because what we then need to do is move to the 150 mesh and do a really quick sand. So we're just doing one very quick pass, and the idea of this is because the wood's prickled up, what it does, this just smooths it back down. It doesn't remove the pre-lack, that's not the idea. We're not trying to remove that first coat. All we want to do is just quickly run over it and remove that prickle, because where the wood's prickled up when it got wet from the first coat. And what that does, it just makes the floor lovely and smooth underfoot. So when people are walking in socks and slippers, the floor's got that lovely smooth finish. People don't want a rough sort of floor that's gripping the socks underfoot. Okay, so this step's really important. I say to people, when you're doing that 150 mesh after your first coat, if you feel that you're moving too fast, you're not moving fast enough. Okay, that's the way you want to sand it. So again, once we've done that mesh, we give it a good vac, and now it's ready for the second coat to go on. Okay, so again, if you've got a helper, it'll make you a bit quicker. Just get your helper cutting in your edges, again about 6 inches, and then get your other guy working your roller. Okay, if you're on your own, it's fine, like I did on the first one. You can just cut in your edges and roll it in. Okay, one other tip for the roller is, you see where the metal bar goes in, as you push down it puts more weight on the end where the metal, the end of the roller, the metal's in. Okay, so you want to keep that to the edge where you're working towards, if that makes sense. So always keep the roller end that's got nothing on. So you can see now, so he's actually just doing it in reverse on those last bits. What you want is that pressure at the opposite, the area you're working away, and what that'll do, it'll just help to get much more consistent, thinner coats. Okay, again, after that second coat, that's normally where you want to leave it a couple of hours. So if you're doing a job on a Monday, you want to aim to try and get your pre-lack or your first coat on, at maybe 2-3 o'clock. Get your next coat on, do your mesh and get your next coat on maybe at 4 or 5 o'clock when you're leaving. Let that dry overnight, and then you come back and put your last coat on the day after. Yeah, so you'll see now that second coat, that second top coat that we're putting on now, so the third coat, this is the final coat, it just really pulls the floor together, gives it that lovely finish. Okay, so this is a straightforward sand on a lovely floor that is now ready for walking on after 4 to 6 hours. And the most important thing is that they don't put any furniture on for 24 hours until the lacquer is actually fully cured. Okay, but any questions, any concerns, feel free to get in touch.